Welcome to today's deep dive. It is Tuesday, March 10th, 2026, and we are absolutely thrilled to have you here with us.
Really glad you could join us today.
Yeah, and if you are tuning in, you probably have a pretty specific idea in your head about what karma is. You know, the classic
Yeah.
pop culture definition.
The whole what goes around comes around thing.
Exactly. It's a phrase we hear everywhere, right?
Yeah.
From casual conversations at the coffee shop to blockbuster movies. You hold the door open for a stranger, and maybe the universe rewards you with a good parking spot.
Or you cut someone off in traffic and mysteriously you get a flat tire on your way home.
Right, yeah. It feels safe. It's fair. And frankly, it makes intuitive sense to our human brains. We just really love the idea of a cosmic scorecard balancing everything out.
It gives us a sense of control.
It totally does. But today, we're going to completely shatter that understanding. Our source material for this deep dive is an incredibly dense, profound, and frankly, kind of intimidating document.
It's definitely a heavy read.
Oh yeah. It's simply titled 22 Types of Karma. And it draws heavily from these ancient frameworks, specifically the Abhidhamma and the Majjhima Nikaya.
Two very distinct, very powerful sources.
Right. And our mission today is to tear down that myth of the cosmic scorecard and replace it with what the text actually describes, which is this strict mechanical hierarchy that governs the trajectory of human consciousness.
It's a completely different paradigm.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, I need to stop and ask for some definitions because I want to make sure we are all on the same page here. For those of you who might not have these ancient frameworks sitting on your nightstands, what exactly are the Abhidhamma and the Majjhima Nikaya? Are we talking about religious scriptures or philosophical essays or what?
That is a perfect place to start, because understanding the nature of these sources really changes how we read the text. The Majjhima Nikaya is one of the primary collections of early Buddhist discourses.
So like actual sermons.
Yeah, you can think of it as the foundational teachings, the direct dialogues and sermons that lay out the core philosophy. It's very practical, very narrative-driven.
Okay, got it.
But the Abhidhamma, however, is something entirely different. And it is crucial to our deep dive today. If the Majjhima Nikaya is the practical guide to the mind, the Abhidhamma is this incredibly dense, microscopic surgical breakdown of cognitive psychology.
Microscopic in what way?
Well, it was compiled later as a way to systematically map out every single micro moment of human consciousness. It is not poetry. It is practically a technical manual for how reality and the mind operate at a molecular level.
Oh, wow.
So when our source document draws from both, it is combining profound philosophical truth with hyper-specific psychological mechanics.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like having the user manual and the underlying computer code open at the exact same time.
That's a great way to put it.
And to add a layer of richness to this technical code, the document includes a fascinating illustration. It's a circular mandala-like image, and it's just incredibly evocative. Let me try to paint a picture of it for you.
It's a very striking image.
It really is. So at the top of this circle, there is a winged angelic figure. They have this serene expression, and they're holding a simple straight staff, kind of presiding over the whole scene.
Very calm, very centered.
Right. Then, circling below them in this dynamic rotation, you have three distinct creatures. There is a magnificent red phoenix, wings raised, beak open like it's crying out or rising from the ashes.
Full of fiery energy.
Yeah. And below that, a coiled blue snake, tongue flicking out, forming these sweeping, watery curves. And finally on the right, a black wolf rearing back and howling.
And they're all in motion.
Exactly. They're all revolving around a central point, a celestial body like a sun or a moon, but it's experiencing an eclipse. A dark sphere is passing over a lighter, radiant one. It immediately gives you this feeling of profound cosmic forces in motion.
That is precisely the feeling the image is meant to evoke, and it perfectly sets the stage for our entire discussion today. The eclipse in the center is particularly telling.
How so?
Well, if you think about what an eclipse represents historically and symbolically, it's a moment of profound transition. It is a terrifying moment of darkness before the light inevitably returns.
Oh, I see.
In the context of this document, that eclipse is a brilliant visual metaphor for the dissolution of the mind at the exact moment of death. The darkness between one state of consciousness and the next.
That's intense. And the animals.
The swirling creatures around it, the fiery, volatile phoenix, the slippery, watery snake, the earthly, aggressive, howling wolf. They represent these massive, impersonal, energetic forces of the mind. They tell us right away that karma is not a static ledger.
It's not a dusty celestial filing cabinet being overseen by an accountant.
Exactly. It is a dynamic, cyclical system of powerful forces. It is raw, it is elemental, and as we will see, it is deeply systematic.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the very first line of the text just throws down the gauntlet. We have this opening quote directly from Majjhima Nikaya 135, which states, "Whatever action a man performs, good or bad, he becomes the heir to that action."
A very famous line.
Yeah, and on the surface, that sounds exactly like the pop culture definition we just talked about. He becomes the heir to that action. Sounds an awful lot like what goes around comes around.
Does sound like that.
But the text immediately follows this up with a massive clarification. It says, karma is not simple arithmetic. It does not accumulate in neat columns of merit and debt, where one good deed cancels out one bad deed.
And this is the most crucial misconception we have to dismantle today. The text explicitly rejects the human desire for cosmic accounting.
Which is hard for us, I think.
Very hard. We desperately want to believe that if we do 10 bad things, maybe we lie, we cheat a little bit, we lose our temper, but we do 11 good things to make up for it, we are somehow in the black.
Right, like a surplus.
Yes, we want to believe we have a karmic bank account where deposits can cover our overdrafts. But the text tells us this is entirely wrong. Karma operates as a dynamic system of forces organized by a strict hierarchy of influence.
But the bank account analogy is just so deeply ingrained in us. It is literally how we navigate human justice, right?
It's the basis of our legal systems, yeah.
You pay a fine to offset a crime. You apologize to offset an insult. If you break your neighbor's window, you buy them a new one, and society says, okay, we are even.
We love the idea of being even.
But if I am understanding this text correctly, it is saying the universe doesn't care about your apologies or your conceptual sense of fairness. It operates as a mechanical law. It's like gravity.
That's a much better analogy.
Gravity doesn't judge whether you are a good person or a bad person when you drop a glass. The glass just falls.
Precisely. It is a mechanical law, completely devoid of moral judgment handed down by an external deity. We are dealing with physics here. Spiritual, cognitive physics.
No judge, just physics.
There is no judge. There is only cause and effect. And to understand the physics of this cause and effect, the text reminds us of a concept from the Abhidhamma called the Jhāna phase of consciousness.
Okay, pause again. The Jhāna phase. That sounds like one of those hyper-specific microscopic moments you mentioned earlier.
It is exactly that.
What exactly happens in the Jhāna phase, and why does it matter so much to the physics of karma?
It matters because it is the engine of the entire system. In the psychological framework of the Abhidhamma, a single thought process is broken down into incredibly rapid micro-moments.
Like frames in a movie.
Yes. First, the mind registers an object, then it identifies it, and then it experiences it. But the Jhāna phase, which literally translates to running swiftly, is the active, volitional phase of the thought process.
Volitional meaning.
Meaning it involves your will. It is the moment your mind actually does something about the object. It is where you generate an impulse, a reaction, a craving, an act of anger, or an act of profound generosity.
I see.
Every single time your mind enters this volitional Jhāna phase, it leaves a trace. It generates a karmic seed, a packet of potential energy.
So if I am walking down the street and someone bumps into me, the moment I register the bump, that's just neutral awareness.
Just a physical sensation, yes.
But the split second where I decide to either yell at them or just let it go, that volitional choice, that reaction,
yeah,
that is the Jhāna phase.
Exactly.
And in that split second, I am generating a karmic seed.
You are generating a seed of energy that will, when the conditions are right, produce a corresponding result. Now multiply that by every conscious choice, every reaction, every muttered word, and every fleeting thought you have every single day of your life.
That is overwhelming. We're talking about spending our entire lives generating billions and billions of these energetic seeds.
Countless seeds.
So if we aren't putting them into a cosmic ledger to be tallied up by an accountant, what are we doing with them? The text says that what we are really looking at today is the sorting mechanism for all those seeds.
Yes, the sorting mechanism.
What happens to all those impulses when the mind finally dissolves at the moment of death? That eclipse from the illustration. How does the universe decide which seed sprouts into the next life?
What's fascinating here is that we are looking at a sorting mechanism that is entirely blind to emotional pleading.
It doesn't care how sorry you are.
Not at all. At the exact moment the mind dissolves at death, it doesn't review a spreadsheet of your life's accomplishments. It doesn't weigh the good against the bad on a set of golden scales.
No scales.
Instead, the mind encounters what the text calls the hierarchy of precedence. It is a literal priority queue.
Like in computing.
Think of it much like how a computer processor manages a system overload. A computer processor doesn't care which program is the most morally good. It prioritizes critical system tasks over background applications based on strict, pre-programmed protocols.
A priority queue. I love that framing. It makes it so much more accessible. The text provides a chart, Table 43, which outlines this queue. And it says that at the moment of death, the dissolving mind scans this queue from top to bottom.
A systematic scan.
Right. If the first type of karma is present in your history, it seizes the mind immediately, full stop. The scanning stops. If that first type is not there, the system defaults to the second tier and scans for that. It is incredibly clinical.
It is entirely clinical. So let us examine the very top of that queue. Priority number 1, Tier 1. The text calls this Garuka, which translates to weighty karma.
Weighty karma. The text says this category consists of actions so incredibly powerful that they literally eclipse all others.
They cast a shadow over everything else.
It has absolute, undeniable dominance in the cognitive system. It completely overrides any other karma you might have accumulated in your entire life. If you have weighty karma, the system stops scanning right there. You are locked in.
And the text breaks this weighty karma down into 2 distinct categories, unwholesome and wholesome. Let's begin with the difficult one.
Okay.
Unwholesome weighty karma consists of what the ancient texts call anantariya kama, or heinous crimes. The examples given are incredibly extreme, absolute taboo acts, such as killing a parent or intentionally drawing the blood of a fully awakened Buddha.
Right. And if someone commits an act like this, the text is brutally clear. It says it makes rebirth in a hell realm, a state of intense, sustained suffering, absolutely inevitable in the very next life.
Inevitable.
And here is the kicker that I really struggled with. It claims that no amount of subsequent charity, no amount of subsequent meditation, and no amount of sincere regret can prevent this result.
That is a staggering claim, especially to a modern listener accustomed to narratives of redemption.
Yeah, we love a redemption arc.
We do. We want to believe that if the villain spends 30 years building hospitals, they are forgiven. So why can't charity offset a heinous crime?
Right. Why not?
The text gives us a fascinating structural reason. It states that the structural damage done to the mind by such an act is simply too severe to be patched over.
Wait, I have to push back here on behalf of anyone listening who thinks this sounds incredibly harsh.
It does sound harsh.
If I do something terrible, but then I dedicate the rest of my life to saving orphans, doesn't that balance the scales? Can't I outweigh the bad?
That is our human instinct speaking. But the text uses a brilliant analogy to explain why that doesn't work. It asks us to think of the mind as a physical structure, just like the body. Consider the broken limb analogy.
Okay, broken limb.
If you shatter your leg in multiple places, you cannot run a marathon the next day. It does not matter how much you want to run. It does not matter how much you apologize for breaking your leg.
Or how many good deeds you do.
Right. It does not matter how much money you donate to charity or how much you volunteer at the local soup kitchen. The physical structure of your leg can no longer support the mechanical action of running.
Oh, wow. Okay, let me translate this into another image just to make sure I'm grasping the scale of this. When they talk about structural dominance within the cognitive continuum, what they really mean is your brain is a house.
A house, yes.
You can't put a heavy, beautiful new roof on it if you've let the foundation completely rot away. The universe isn't punishing you for having a bad foundation. Physics just won't let the roof stay up. The structure collapses under its own weight.
That is an excellent extension of the analogy. An act as violently transgressive as a heinous crime literally fractures the cognitive and spiritual foundation of the individual.
The foundation is just gone.
Yes. The text uses a very specific technical phrase. It makes the person karmically incapable of entering deep meditative states, or jhana, and incapable of attaining stages of awakening in that lifetime. The foundation is broken.
So it's not about being unforgiven by some cosmic judge who is holding a grudge. The universe isn't angry at you.
No anger involved.
The universe isn't shaking his fist. Your mind simply cannot support the weight of those elevated states anymore. The instrument is fundamentally broken.
Exactly. It is a tragedy of physics, not a moral condemnation.
Wow.
But let's look at the other side of the coin. Because Tier 1 weighty karma can also be wholesome. It is not all doom and gloom.
Thankfully.
And what constitutes wholesome weighty karma in this framework? It is crucial to note that it is not building an orphanage or feeding 1 million people.
Even though those are great things?
While those are profoundly good acts, they do not reach tier 1. Wholesome weighty karma refers specifically to the attainment of the meditative absorptions, the jhanas.
Which is mind-blowing. I really want to emphasize this for you listening. You would think the ultimate good karma, the absolute pinnacle of human achievement that guarantees an elevated rebirth, would be some grand external act of philanthropy.
Saving a country, curing a disease.
Yeah. But the text says the ultimate tier 1, highest priority positive karma is entirely internal. It is the mastery of the mind's capacity for stillness. Why is sitting with your eyes closed considered more powerful than building a hospital?
Because again, we are dealing with a mechanical law of consciousness. Building a hospital is a beautiful act, but it is often mixed with worldly concerns.
Like what?
Pride, stress, logistics, the desire for recognition. The meditative absorptions, the jhanas, are states of consciousness where the mind is completely, utterly unified and stripped of all hindrances.
It's pure.
It is. If a practitioner masters these jhanic states, and crucially, the text notes maintains that mastery until the moment of death, they are generating an energetic imprint so profoundly intense, so purely concentrated, that it eclipses all normal, daily, scattered human actions.
Incredible.
The text states that this level of mental purification guarantees rebirth in the serene, elevated Brahma realms corresponding to that specific level of mental absorption.
So whether it is a heinous crime or a profound meditative absorption, weighty karma dominates the queue because of its sheer volitional intensity. It is a massive spike in the data.
A crater in the landscape.
Yeah, a crater in the landscape of the mind that nothing else can smooth over.
And that leads us to a very complex intersection, which the text outlines in Table 44. How do these incredibly intense forces interact with each other?
Right.
What happens when a person has both profound meditative skills and a history of grave mistakes?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the text goes out of its way to correct the very common misunderstanding. People might look at this priority queue and think, okay, I've figured out the cheat code.
A loophole.
Yeah, a loophole. If I've done something terrible, I will just go to a retreat, become a master meditator, attain jhana, and use wholesome weighty karma to cancel out my unwholesome weighty karma. Problem solved.
But as we just established with the broken limb and the shattered foundation analogies, the text firmly states that this is impossible.
No cheat codes.
The text says, jhana does not function as a corrective force for grave, unwholesome actions already committed. It points out that absorption refines the mind's capacity for stillness, but it does not and cannot neutralize the ethical momentum of past grave deeds. It merely temporarily suppresses the hindrances.
It's like putting a really powerful pair of noise-canceling headphones over a blaring siren.
That's a great way to think of it.
The siren is still blaring. You haven't unplugged it? You have just suppressed your experience of it temporarily while the headphones are on. But the moment you take them off, or the moment your concentration breaks, the siren is right there, as loud as ever.
That is a perfect description of suppression, which brings up a sudden, unexpected pivot in the text. To explain this dynamic, the text introduces the perspective of albedo, or purification. Now, this is a fascinating crossover because albedo is actually alchemical terminology.
Right. I was reading this and suddenly I felt like I was in a completely different book. Why is a text discussing ancient Buddhist psychological frameworks suddenly bringing up Western alchemical terms? What is the bridge there?
It is a brilliant pedagogical choice by the authors of the document. Alchemy, in its philosophical sense, was never really about turning physical lead into literal gold.
It wasn't.
No, it was a metaphor for the transformation of the soul, taking the base, unrefined, chaotic elements of human nature, the lead, and purifying them into a state of enlightened perfection, the gold.
Oh, that makes sense.
The albedo phase in alchemy is the whitening or purification phase, where impurities are washed away. By bringing this term in, the text is suggesting we view unwholesome karma not as a ledger of debts-demanding future punishment, but as a base, unrefined constraint in the present moment that needs to be clarified.
That makes so much sense. The text says, unwholesome actions generate results that limit the mind's available modes of functioning. It's an internal limitation, a cloudiness in the water, not an external threat from a punisher.
Exactly.
So what exactly does purification look like in this mechanical context? The text says purification removes obstructions, or what the Abhidhamma calls kilesa, the defilements like greed, anger, and delusion. It weakens those unwholesome roots. But, and this is a massive, uncomfortable but, and this does not erase the historical facts of action.
This is the hard truth of this system, and it is something the modern mind frequently rebels against. The text explicitly states, in italics for emphasis, karma cannot be neutralized.
You can't undo it.
You cannot undo what has been done. The volitional energy from the Jhāna phase has already been released into the system. The pebble has been thrown into the pond, and the ripples must travel.
The physics are already in motion.
What purification does is exhaust or dilute that energy. It changes how you relate to the ripples. The text gives us this beautiful, somewhat haunting line to summarize this approach. We do not seek to balance the ledger. We seek to repair the instrument so that it may finally stop producing noise.
Stop producing noise.
Why?
That is so evocative. I love that phrasing. You are not trying to balance out the bad notes you played on the piano yesterday by playing a bunch of really good notes today.
Right.
You are trying to fix the piano's mechanics so it stops playing out of tune entirely. You want to exhaust the momentum of the old, unwholesome karma so it simply runs out of steam and has nothing left to latch onto.
That's a perfect application of the idea.
But wait, I have to ask again. Saying that karma cannot be neutralized sounds incredibly fatalistic. If I cannot fix my past, if the ripples are inevitable, why should I even try to improve? Why not just give up?
Because while you cannot change the ripples that are already moving, you have absolute control over whether you throw more pebbles. And furthermore, purification changes the environment the ripples hit. A ripple hitting a chaotic, storm-tossed sea creates more chaos. A ripple hitting a perfectly still, deep lake eventually dissipates.
It just smooths out.
That is what repairing the instrument means. And there is only one state where the production of this noise completely ceases. The text points out the sole exception to this relentless generation of karmic momentum. Only the arahant, the fully awakened being, generates no new karma whatsoever.
Not at all.
Their actions are purely functional. The volitional engine that creates those energetic seeds in the Jhāna phase has been completely dismantled. They act out of pure wisdom, leaving no trace.
It really emphasizes the mechanical strictness of this entire system. The universe doesn't negotiate. You can't plead your case to a higher power. You can only work tirelessly within the mechanics of your own mind.
That's the work.
So that is Tier 1. Weighty karma. The absolute dominance of heinous crimes or profound meditation. But as the text notes, let's be realistic. For the vast, vast majority of human beings, there is no weighty karma present at the moment of death.
It's very rare.
Most of us listening haven't committed heinous atrocities, and most of us, unfortunately, aren't masters of deep meditative absorption. We are just normal people. So what happens to us when that priority queue starts scanning?
If the priority queue scans Tier 1 and finds it empty, it doesn't pause to reconsider. It instantly drops down to priority 2 Āsanna, which is Death-Proximate karma.
Death-Proximate karma. The text defines this as the thought, memory, or volitional impulse that is active immediately before death. The state of mind at the exact moment of dissolution.
The final flash.
And it says this tier takes precedence over a lifetime of normal actions simply because of temporal proximity. It's the freshest impulse in the system.
Think of it like dropping a pebble into a pond right at the edge of a waterfall. You might have thrown 100 pebbles upstream an hour ago, but whatever ripple is closest to the edge at the exact moment the water goes over is the one that influences the trajectory of the water below.
Because it's right there.
It is the freshest impulse available to condition the next moment of existence.
The text calls this final cognitive series of a life the gateway to the next existence. And this is where the implications get incredibly dramatic. It says, if the mind recalls a wholesome deed, or dwells on a benevolent object, or feels a sense of deep peace right at that final slipping moment, the rebirth-linking consciousness will be wholesome.
Yes.
But if the mind dwells on fear, attachment to the body, panic, or a sudden memory of conflict, the rebirth will be woeful. It is a razor's edge.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it suddenly illuminates so many ancient human traditions and rituals surrounding death.
Oh, totally.
For centuries, across cultures that didn't even communicate with one another, we see this recurring theme of preparing the dying. Why do almost all traditions have rituals designed to soothe the person in their final hours? Why do we instinctively lower our voices, play gentle music, hold their hand, or recite sacred texts?
It is not just about making them comfortable physically.
No, it's deeply psychological.
Exactly. The text explicitly says, this hierarchy explains the critical importance of a peaceful environment for the dying. The objective of those sitting bedside is practically surgical. You are trying to guide those final jhāna impulses toward a clear, wholesome object. You are literally trying to hijack the Tier 2 priority queue for them.
Hijack might be a bit of a strong word, but you are certainly trying to optimize the system on their behalf.
Right.
Because if temporal proximity is the deciding factor, then a single powerful moment of clarity, forgiveness, or peace right at the end can mathematically override a tremendous amount of lesser, everyday negative actions from the past. It becomes the dominant force conditioning the next state, simply because it was the last thing in the buffer before the system rebooted.
That is both terrifying and deeply comforting at the same time. It's comforting because it means a moment of true peace at the end holds immense power. It means it is never truly too late to find a moment of grace.
It's a very hopeful concept in a way.
But it is terrifying because, let's be honest, dying is often a messy, scary, and physically painful process. It's very easy to imagine the mind dwelling on fear or panic or the pain in the body in that final moment. If you are struggling to breathe, it is hard to focus on a feeling of benevolent peace.
Which is exactly why relying solely on Tier 2 is a massive existential gamble. You cannot control the circumstances of your death.
You really can't.
You might not have the luxury of a peaceful environment with loved ones chanting softly around you. You might be in extreme pain, or heavily medicated, or unconscious, or it might happen entirely suddenly in an accident.
Yeah.
And if there is no distinct, powerful deathbed memory or thought available for the system to latch on to, what then?
Then we drop down the queue again. We go to Tier 3. And I feel like this is the tier where most of human life actually happens. This is the tier for you and me. Priority 3 chika, or habitual karma. The text defines this as the patterns formed by frequently repeated actions throughout a lifetime.
Yes. When conscious will fades at the moment of death, when there is no weighty karma to dominate, and when the final moment is muddled, medicated, or indistinct, the mind does what it always does in a crisis. It defaults to its training.
It falls back on the paths of least resistance.
Exactly. The paths it has spent an entire lifetime carving.
The text has a quote here that is so profound, I literally want to frame it and hang it on my wall. It says, "Character is simply the groove worn into the mind by habitual karma." Let that sink in for a second. Character is just a groove?
It is a profoundly psychological concept, perfectly articulated. Every time you react with anger to a minor inconvenience, you are taking a microscopic chisel and deepening the groove of anger in your cognitive architecture.
It's just chipping away.
Every time you practice patience when someone is rude to you, you are taking that same chisel and deepening the groove of patience.
This connects so perfectly to modern neuroscience. I was reading this and immediately thought of neuroplasticity. The famous saying in neuroscience is, neurons that fire together, wire together.
Precisely the same concept.
If you constantly doom scroll and cultivate anxiety, your brain literally wires itself to be anxious more easily. It builds a neural highway for anxiety. It's the exact same concept just described 2,500 years ago in terms of karmic energy instead of synapses.
It's a beautiful parallel.
I picture it like water flowing over rock. At first, the water can go anywhere. It's free. But over time, as it flows the same way every day, it carves a riverbed. And eventually, if it flows long enough, it carves a canyon.
And once that canyon is deep enough,
the water has no choice but to flow down that path. The text explicitly says, if a person spends a lifetime cultivating irritation, their mind will naturally incline toward irritation when the control of the conscious will fades.
Then when the pilot passes out, the autopilot takes over. And your habitual karma is your autopilot. This brings back the alchemist perspective mentioned in the text, and it highlights the extreme, often overlooked danger of what we might consider minor faults.
Right, because again, we think in terms of the cosmic ledger. We think, oh, I just napped at the barista because my coffee was cold. It's a -1 point. It's not a big deal. I didn't rob a bank.
It feels insignificant.
Or, so you're telling me my habitual karma of muttering under my breath every time I get stuck at a red light is actually carving a canyon of irritability in my mind?
Yes, unfortunately. You are taking a microscopic chisel to your cognitive architecture every single time you do it, because it acquires gravitational pull. The sheer repetition of the act gives it weight.
It builds up over time.
It is not the severity of the single act. Muttering at a red light is harmless in isolation, but it's the accumulated density of the habit over decades. This completely shifts how we should view our daily routines. They are not trivial throwaway moments. They are the very mechanism by which we are constructing our future consciousness.
It's building the canyon walls day by day, interaction by interaction.
Yeah.
And if you've built a massive canyon of anxiety or resentment or impatience, that is exactly where the waters of consciousness will violently flow when the dam breaks at death.
The water follows the deepest groove.
It makes you realize how vital everyday mindfulness really is. Mindfulness isn't just about feeling relaxed. It's the active, urgent practice of consciously choosing not to deepen a negative groove. It is choosing to step out of the riverbed before it becomes a canyon.
Precisely. It is structural maintenance. But the Abhidhamma system is incredibly thorough, even more thorough than that. Because there is a scenario, however unlikely, where an individual might not have strong habitual karma either.
Like who?
Perhaps an infant who hasn't lived long enough to form habits, or someone with a profoundly unformed, scattered character who never did anything consistently. Or perhaps, in the grand scheme of many lifetimes, all the habitual karma has already come to fruition and been exhausted.
Oh, that makes sense.
What then? Does the system crash? The universe has not simply dropped the connection.
It has a failsafe. It is like the ultimate backup generator. Tier 4, the final stop in the priority queue Katattā, or residual karma.
This is the reserve store. The text describes it as consisting of actions performed once and completely forgotten, deeds done without strong intention, or even actions from previous lifetimes that have simply not had the right environmental conditions to ripen yet.
I think of this as the loose change at the bottom of the karmic couch cushions.
That's very apt.
It's the stuff you didn't even realize was there. The text notes that this is generally weak karma. It didn't have the intense volitional spike to be weighty, it didn't happen right at the moment of death, and it wasn't repeated enough to become a habitual groove. It's just residual.
While it may be weak in its individual energetic charge, its function within the system is absolute and profound. It ensures that the causal chain never breaks.
The engine keeps running.
Even without strong habits or specific deathbed thoughts, there is always something in the reserve store. It is the absolute fallback mechanism of samsara, the endless cycle of rebirth. It guarantees that as long as there is unexhausted karmic potential, no matter how faint, the process will continue. The engine will turn over.
So what does this all mean? When we zoom out and look at this entire structure, Table 43, the mechanical hierarchy of Garuka, Āsanna, Āciṇṇaka, and Katattā. From the overwhelming dominance of weighty crimes or deep meditation, down to the final thought of death, down to the daily habits we form, all the way to the loose change of the couch cushions. What is the ultimate takeaway for us?
It means we must entirely discard the idea of moral judgment from our understanding of causality.
No more ledger.
The text concludes its structural analysis by reiterating this point emphatically. This hierarchy governing precedence at death does not represent a moral judgment of the individual's inherent goodness or badness by an external, observing force. It reflects three specific clinical factors: relative strength, temporal proximity, and structural dominance within the cognitive continuum.
It is all just energy moving through a closed system, following the paths of greatest intensity or least resistance. When we translate that out of the technical jargon, it means the universe isn't punishing the person with unwholesome, weighty karma. The universe is just observing that the mind structure has collapsed and can only sink, like a rock dropped in a pond.
It just sinks.
The universe isn't rewarding the person who happens to remember a good deed at the moment of death. It's simply following the freshest energetic ripple available. It's physics.
It is deeply liberating, in a sense, because it places the locus of control entirely within the mechanics of our own minds. There is no external deity to appease, no cosmic accountant to trick or bargain with. There is only the continuous mechanical work of purifying your own instrument.
We are mechanics working on our own engines.
Hmm.
And understanding this hierarchy fundamentally changes how you view your everyday life. You stop looking at your actions as points on a scorecard designed to buy you a good afterlife. You start seeing them as literal, structural modifications to your own mind in the present moment.
Every thought,
every habit, every reaction at a red light is a structural modification. You're either building a prison or a sanctuary, brick by brick.
This raises an important question, however, a provocative thought that isn't explicitly resolved in the text but naturally, inevitably emerges from examining this mechanical hierarchy. If we look closely at the dynamic between Tier 2, Death-Proximate karma, and Tier 3, Habitual karma.
Right, the dynamic where Tier 2 overrides Tier 3, where the freshest impulse at death overrides a lifetime of daily habits.
Yes. If a single intense death-proximate thought can mathematically override a lifetime of gentle, wholesome habitual grooves, If a genuinely good person who has spent their life being kind is overcome by a sudden moment of sheer terror, pain, or clinging at the exact moment of death, and that fear acts as the gateway, what does that reveal about the ultimate fragility of human character?
Oh, wow. That is terrifying. It really makes you wonder, does it render our daily habits meaningless? If the final moment is a messy, chaotic gamble that can hijack the whole system, why bother building the canyon of good habits? Why spend 40 years practicing patience if a car crash can induce a moment of panic that ruins it all?
Or does it highlight the exact opposite? Does it urgently highlight that the true purpose of a lifetime of habitual practice is not to build up a bank account of points, but simply to ensure we have the ironclad mental discipline necessary to control that one final terrifying moment of consciousness?
That the whole point of the habit is so that when the system breaks down, when the physical pain hits and the eclipse begins, your autopilot is so perfectly deeply calibrated toward peace that you don't panic.
You fall back on your training.
You don't let the howling black wolf from the image take over. You let the serene angel guide the process, because serenity is the only groove deep enough left in your mind.
That is a very compelling way to synthesize the rich symbolism of the mandala with the cold mechanics of the text. The habit is not the reward itself. The habit is the training for the final test.
That is an incredibly powerful thought to leave on. This has been a truly intense, mind-expanding journey through the mechanics of consciousness, the physics of causality, and what it really means to shape our own destiny. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure to break this down.
Take a moment today to notice the grooves you are carving in your own mind. Notice the water flowing over the rock. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and we will catch you on the next deep dive. Take care.